Welcome back. Thank you for joining us for episode 2. This is the UFC 270 pre-show edition of The Fight Plug. We're recording on Monday, January 17th, which means that in 5 days, Cyril Gane will step into the octagon as the interim heavyweight champion, and he'll be challenging Francis Ngannou for his actual reigning, albeit technically disputed heavyweight championship status. It's a big fight with big boys, which I'm sure is going to garner a lot of extra attention, as heavyweight fights tend to do in combat sports. But before we get into that, we're also going to take a minute to recap what went down between Calvin Kattar and Giga Chikadze this past Saturday, as that fight had big implications for the featherweight division title picture. But I can't do any of that until I welcome my esteemed co-host, Brandon Anaya, still glowing from that 49ers playoff win over the Cowboys yesterday, I'm sure.
I didn't know what was going to get me into it, and you did it, man.
Of course. I mean, and before we even get into the punches and kicks, I have to ask, if you have any thoughts or takeaways from that fight. Were you nervous?
From the fight or the
Oh, excuse me, from the game, from the fight.
I wasn't nervous until the fourth quarter, and the way it planned out, like, they're such a better coach team, and the Cowboys have a good roster, but the Niners have it sneaks up on roster that sneaks up on people. They don't realize it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like, okay, the Cowboys are trash, and it's the truth. I mean, it's not I think Cowboy fans know. I mean,
they were winning despite their flaws, their lacking.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you win. They get 4 games, 2 games against the Giants, 2 games against the Washington football team. That's 4 wins, and then you're talking about playing the Eagles, and then we saw what happened to the Eagles. So that's 6 games that they get against pure trash.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the 49ers, they play the the worst team in their division, Seattle. Seattle could have lined up yesterday and beat Dallas, in my honest opinion. The score probably would have been the same, and I think anyone that was watching the game, eyeball test, I mean, they were beating the fuck out of the Cowboys, and then it was like, hey, how can I lose this?
Right.
Instead of
yeah, Dak's decision making in the very last play was questionable. And I'm not a big football guy myself. I do fantasy football. That's like where my football knowledge plays. Yes, but I'm a Bengals fan off of a bet.
I love the Bengals. This year, I really like the team. They're a good team.
Yeah, they're playing lights out. So I mean, it's year of the Tiger, like legitimately the year of the Tiger. Yeah. So hey, fuck it. As long as we're winning, I'm on board. But yeah, everybody's path to the playoffs is different. So that's kind of where they have to kind of prove themselves.
Yeah.
So I thought
and
that was
a good segue. It's a good segue into the fight that we're going to talk about, because you got a team like the Niners, who they're like grizzled. There's a lot of grizzled vets on the team. They want that championship. They were close to it at one time, and fucking this shit, it was like nut up or shut up. And then you got Dallas, who they've got some players that are young. That talent is there. Like, you watch it, the talent's fucking there. Like, I'm not saying they're not a talented group of dudes, but they're just a few pieces and things, like Giga is himself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's a pretty good analogy for it. It wasn't as close. I don't know. It wasn't as close to me. It looked like Calvin won by quite a bit.
Oh, yeah,
at least,
for sure.
But it was like, kind of that metaphor where if, you have that vet who's been there, who was close and knows how to do it, but just needs to get back and show it. And then you have that young up-and-comer who's there. It's obvious. It's probably going to be there again.
Mm-hmm.
But there was just that difference. And it was the decision-making. Like, Giga's decision-making wasn't as – it's not that he didn't know what to do or how to do it, but I think translating from kickboxing to MMA, where Calvin, like, I know he's such a good fighter, but he seems like such a good mix, like like the new pro that we see, like the George St. Pierre type pro, where everything's incorporated, So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he really nullified that kicking game from Giga early on in this fight. It was pretty surprising, because that first round before he got the takedown, which came off of a Giga trip, which meant that Kattar didn't even have to use any energy to get him down. Before that, Giga was throwing everything at him. He was changing levels nicely, throwing straight left punches, kicking to the midsection, and finding the mark. And then once Kattar reminded him, hey, like, you don't want anything to do with the ground, with me. You know what I mean? That really, and then he got in his face. He closed the distance. He didn't let Giga stay at kicking distance, and kind of stayed in his fight and completely shut that part of Giga's game down. I have to ask, because this is one of the main talking points that I feel like a lot of people were asking coming out of it, and I want to get your opinion about it. Do
Right.
you think that Giga was
Sure.
looking past Kattar?
Wow, maybe just because of all of the with the Volk empty like fight talk, like
Right.
who's going to be the next guy to step in for that, and all the the heavily debated especially in the media, with Cejudo and everything. I'm sure I don't know if you can ever really look past a guy when he's locked in the cage with you, but I think for sure things probably dynamic probably changed in his training when he was hearing himself like, oh, and then Dana brought it up in the press conference too, like, hey, we've got Giga who's fighting, we've got all these guys ready to fight now, the Korean Zombie, we got these guys ready to go, you know, Cejudo needs to chill. And hearing that, and then hearing the boss say it, like it couldn't have not been in his head in some way.
Yeah, I think it
But
definitely lit a fire under him. I'm not sure if whether he did or didn't look past him. I don't know that that fight looks any different
yeah,
than it went on Saturday.
I don't think
But he
so.
was,
Yeah,
yeah, he was pushing hard for trying to get in there for that fight against Volkanovski. And I
yeah,
think if anything,
rightfully so.
it's kind of a blessing that he didn't get it, because I think this is a lesson that Giga needed to learn on Saturday.
Good point. I agree with you. That's a really good point because he doesn't he didn't nothing about, I mean, his face was pretty messed up, but they both were, and they're both rashed up pretty good after, but he didn't look like he didn't belong there.
Correct. Yeah.
Just looked like the that and he has got a lot of fight experience, but not so much MMA experience, or we're mixing it all in a high pressure situation. And I think if any fighter, Calvin Cater's name isn't, to guys like you and me, that's like, oh shit, like
Right.
he's not a tough night out, like you say, but um, I don't know if maybe, it's lost in translation with Giga where he comes from. It would be interesting to know his perspective on from the outside in looking into the UFC and his opponents. Where it's like Calvin Cater, that's not a name that like you're gonna put this Calvin Cater in the like thumbnail, and that's not gonna pop as it would, if it would have been anyone else's name. So that could very well. That's a good point that you made.
That's true. I think Calvin Cater has a style that can lead himself to being a very, very fan friendly fighter who can, be another Dustin Poirier type of name. You know what I mean? I think he's that
Yes.
exciting. He hasn't really put together like a signature, like a win streak in the UFC. You know what I mean? And he's fought
Okay.
all killers. You know what I mean? So I
Oh
can't
yeah.
really hold that against him. It's not been an easy run for Calvin Cater. His style is really, really exciting. And he's had a lot of time off between fights. And that's going to lead me to the next thing that I wanted to talk about with this fight is a lot of people seem to think that Calvin Cater may have punched his ticket to a title fight. Now, we know Korean Zombie has already been slated to step in to fight Volkanovski, and that fight is scheduled for April 9th. And now after that winner is recovered, it could still be another 3 to 4 months till the winner of that fight is ready to defend again. So by that time, Max Holloway could be healthy already.
Right.
So
Yeah.
this could be as good as this outcome was for Calvin Cater. There's still a little bit of uncertainty around his place in the title picture, and we also have the scenario, although albeit unlikely, I think, anyways, of Korean Zombie winning that fight and Volkanovski
Yeah.
wanting rematch. You're grimacing. I know. I don't think it's very likely either, but it's just I feel like there's a lot of potential for Calvin Cater to be on the shelf a lot longer than he would like to be. What do you think about his position in this featherweight division, and do you think he might have to take another fight before he gets a crack at the champion?
Yeah. You mean Cater, right? Not Korean Zombie, right?
Cater, yeah.
Yeah, I think he would have to take I think he would be. It was a rough one though. Like, I'm pretty sure he's gonna feel this fight for another week and a half to if not a month.
Good point. He could benefit
Yeah,
from like 5 to 6 months off. Yeah.
yeah, and then too, it's a built-in excuse. Like, well, why haven't you been active in the meantime? Like, bro, did you see me take down your prospect, this top guy? Like, that shit wasn't easy.
I went to
And the
fucking
more
war.
he pumps up, the more And I'm sorry that I'm a bad fan, but I usually like to stick in and listen to like that post and even some of the like the commentary afterwards or what he has to say. but there was football on, so it's kind of hard to like watch dudes in suits talk about the fight. But
Right, and those guys went straight to the hospital anyway, so I mean, they
right,
weren't around to comment
yeah,
much.
yeah. And it's going to be interesting because I think for him it would be smart to really pump up, like, man, that guy was great. Like, I did not expect him to be as good as he was, and that took everything I had to beat him. And if it would be smart to politic it that way to play off of that, because Giga's a big name. I mean, I think he was the gentleman we're talking in the last fight about different divisions, and his name wasn't coming to the top of our head for some reason. So I mean, we even mentioned him, and so I think he should really play that up and hope that he can get some time off. But it would suck because that's such a good performance he had, and I know that must have been a tough camp going through the holidays. So to have to do it, so you would hope that he gets a title shot and doesn't get lost in the wash.
Too true, too true. And now there's a lot there was a lot made about his previous fight with Max Holloway, and it's still going to be kind of hard to separate Calvin Kattar from that performance. It's almost a transformative turnaround for him coming in and doing what he did to Giga Chikadze after Max Holloway threw 900 plus punches at him and 400 plus landed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that also kind of leads to your point about playing up his fight with Giga Chikadze. Is like, yeah, that was fucking tough. That wasn't easy. That was a hard night out, and it took a lot of mental energy to not only go in and win that fight, but go and take the method in which I was defeated and literally turn that around and impose that on him. I think that's a game plan moving forward that we're going to see from this New England cartel a lot, because I mean, Max Holloway was saying it himself in that fight. He was yelling out, "I'm the best boxer in the UFC." That might be true, or at least in the context of that division. But is it starting to look like the New England cartel might have the best stable of boxers in the UFC? Because Rob Font and now Calvin Kattar's boxing looks so good, and it looks just so different from it. I mean, they pump the jab so well. I think that there's a lot of guys in the featherweight division that are going to struggle with those dudes. They're going to be mainstays in the top 5 in my book.
Yeah, you're gonna hear those two names for the next 3 years at least, going through. And I think any up and comer like a Giga, any other guys that are coming up in that division are gonna have to fight those guys. And the blueprint's there, and so definitely. As far as like one of the better boxing stables, I mean, you got what Trevor Whitman's doing over there. Those guys can box the shit off of anybody's face, but that's kind of like you'd be hard pressed to find a better one. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and especially at least in the featherweight division, I'm looking at the rankings right now. We have Max Holloway. Obviously, he's made more than enough of a statement to show that his boxing is quite a bit ahead of Calvin Kattar. Brian Ortega, Korean Zombie, Yair Rodriguez, Josh Emmett, Arnold Allen, all a lot of very well-rounded guys, a lot of competent strikers. But to me, Calvin Kattar's boxing was a real highlight of that division, and I'm really, really excited to see if and it would be kind of tough. It would be a tough pill to swallow, but if he ends up having to step in there with Max Holloway again before he gets a crack at that title, let's say by the time Holloway comes back, Alexander Volkanovski has talked himself into a more intriguing match with someone else. We know that, like I said, I know you grimaced and thought that it's very unlikely, like the Korean Zombie whole debacle about him possibly getting a win. But what do you think of Calvin Kattar's chances if he has to go through Max Holloway again?
Oh man, I just think like the styles make fights. Cliche goes with that one. The two styles, because what Kattar's gonna want to do, Max knows where he's coming from. Max has seen it before. Max could do Calvin Kattar. Like maybe Kattar's doing a bad Max Holloway impression. Maybe you know what I mean, kind of thing. So you can't like stand in there with Jerry Seinfeld and then you can't go on before Jerry Seinfeld. What is going on with all this? Like everyone's gonna know. So I think that's just a tough one because he's really gonna Holloway's gonna have to be on the show for a while, and if all things go well, they both fight in a title fight. But you know, it's gonna have to go through Holloway at some point.
Yeah, whether he gets that strap and then has to fight Holloway again, or whether
Right.
he has to fight him again on the way to the strap, he's going to be a factor in that division, and that's going to be a bit of uncertainty surrounding Calvin Kattar moving forward. Because, like I said, I can't ever forget that performance. You know, it was that was a Hall of Fame
crazy.
performance by Max Holloway.
Yeah.
I want to shift focus to Giga Chikadze a little bit. What do you think are the biggest question marks surrounding Giga Chikadze in the aftermath of this fight?
I think the fight IQ or the emotional EQ of like, if it goes to the ground, because he knows what to do if it goes to the ground. You can't tell me that they would allow this man to go in there if he didn't know it. But it's that I think it's just in any situation in life where you have to like emotionally be ready for that and being able to slow down the situation and not and breathe instead of being like, fuck, I don't want to be here. You know, and then you're just overthinking things and you're grabbing at the wrong places, you're turning the wrong way instead of just doing what you do in practice every day. Because I'm sure that has to be a focal point of his training, is like how to, you're not going to be in that division and not know how to stop a takedown.
Precisely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm sure like the dudes we're going to talk about later on in the coming up, those guys probably don't work takedowns as much in the heavyweight division, but in this type of division, that's like a wrestler's delight. Up or down in that division, that's where those guys are. That's what a lot of those guys are going to be, especially in the U.S. or facing North American type fighters, where it's just a wrestling base in that weight class. And look at the champ. You know?
Yeah, exactly. So for my money, it looked like the cardio of Giga Chikadze was an issue, and it's not because, you know, not for lack of getting his ass kicked in there, you know what I mean? We all know that that plays a factor, but it looked like midway through the second round, he was really losing a lot of the pop in his punches, and he's like, we know he's not really the biggest puncher. He's certainly competent in all forms of striking, but his kicking is where his bread is buttered. And that got shut down. But even before it really looked like he took a noticeable decline in output, he was throwing really, really hard with his hands. He had a really, really clean, sharp, crisp straight left. And after the second round, there was very little pop on any of his punches. It didn't really look like Calvin Kattar respected his hands whatsoever. After the second round, Calvin Kattar didn't really look like he was worried about Giga Chikadze's power being a factor or being a threat to him. So I think that's something that I'd like to see him work on. I don't think he's ever been past the third round before this in the UFC. So I think that would be an interesting test. I'd like to see him in a main event to see how he does in another 5-round fight with a different style of fighter and see if that still continues to be an issue. Is there any particular fights that you think are would be appealing for Giga Chikadze or a good move for him in his career moving forward to rebound from this loss?
I think there's a gentleman fighting tonight or this weekend. We talked about it. Like Ilia would be a good fight for him. That'd be one I'd like to see. But,
are you referencing Ilia Topuria?
Yeah.
Oh, it's an interesting fight. Both Georgian fighters too.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure that they probably wouldn't want to do it, but I think depending on how Topuria does this weekend, again, like we talked about last week, it's close in events, heal up times and everything else. I think I would be interested in it. I know the rankings might not warrant it, and he probably wouldn't want to do it for all those reasons put together. But if you're asking me what you'd want to see, that's the one I'd want to see.
That's the fight you'd like to see. Yeah, Ilia Topuria right now, at least as far as the Topology rankings or Tapology, he's ranked number 14 at featherweight, and Giga Chikadze is ranked number 8. So he would be fighting back in the rankings a little bit, which I have no problem with that fight. I think it's a really fun fight. We'll have to see how things go for Ilia Topuria this coming Saturday. But
he kicks the shit out of Jordan, like bad, you know.
Good point. And there's he's got plenty of options. If that doesn't pan out, there's Josh Emmett there. Ideally, I guess for Giga Chikadze, ideally, I guess you'd want to kind of face him, match him up with someone coming off a loss. You have Yair Rodriguez, although he was in an absolute war. That guy is going to need some time off too, so that could work out time wise. I know a lot of people were saying Brian T. City Ortega. I think that would be an interesting fight. It'd be a classic grappler versus striker match. I don't know if I would advise Ortega seems like he's falling in love with his hands a little bit after his last performance. I don't know if I would advise him to go in there and try and strike with Giga Chikadze. So that's definitely a dangerous fight for Giga. That'd probably be the one I want the least if I were Giga. But as the viewer, I'd be very interested in that fight.
See, that's the thing, though. I think they might throw because, I mean, Kattar, for all intents and purposes, he's worthy of a title shot, and I don't think either you or I would bat an eye if tomorrow they said, hey, we're going to throw him in there. I think it makes sense. The only guy to really make him look dumb was Holloway. So. And then he what he did to Giga, I think they might want Giga to fight back a little bit, give him a little of that Sean O'Malley treatment. Maybe let him fight someone behind him, put a highlight reel on him, because you don't want the next countdown to the UFC where this up and coming star, his highlight reel, they're like, well, why don't you show a fight from this last year, or why don't you show a fight from the last? You don't want to have to be pulling up, so I'm sure they probably want to build that highlight reel a little bit more.
That's a good point. And like I was mentioning earlier, you know what I mean? That title picture, that title mix around the top 3 or 4 of the division could end up getting a little bit log jammed and taking a little while too. So, if he wants to really fight up in the rankings and get right back in there real fast, he could end up having to wait longer, with no fault of his own, even with winning. So, it could have kind of advisable to tell him, hey, fight on the fringes of the top 10. Take, fight number 8. Well, he is number 8. Fight number 9, fight number 11. You know what I mean? Get some highlights.
Yeah, I would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, as far as I know, they get paid the same. They have contracts. So, and that's one thing that's kind of like changed my way of thinking. Like you mentioned, Sean O'Malley saying, hey, I get paid the same anyways. I'll fight cans. I'll go make my name off fighting these guys. And all of a sudden, MVP over in Bellator is looking like a genius. So, but that guy's not going to get any respect anytime soon still.
Right.
So, let's go ahead and transition. Do you want to talk about the flyweights? You want to talk about Figueiredo versus Moreno first, and then we'll cap it off with the heavyweights?
Yeah, that's cool. I think it's kind of funny that they're throwing this card out there after like the news hit of the pay-per-view cost raise. They're throwing this card out there.
Mm-hmm.
You would have thought that they would have waited, because I don't think this is anything that UFC. It's like they're not doing it on purpose, but and you can't fault anybody because it's a job just like anyone else. But no one wants to go through training camp through Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving. Like no one, and that's what this pay-per-view would be. You'd probably, November, December, we're in January, so you would want to start sometime around Thanksgiving if you had your way, if it wasn't like a short, if you knew you're going to fight.
Late November,
that would really suck to go through a training camp and that. I mean, I'm sure Gane and Ngannou did fine, and these 2 guys that we're talking about did fine, but I think that's why the pay-per-view isn't as good this time around.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if that's what you wanted to hear as far opening statement, but I was like, I was looking it up, it's like, man, there's some good guys on there, and I could see a few highlight reels at the end of the show where they're showing some good knockouts because of the fights that they made, but
the main card isn't exactly full of marquee fights outside of the main and the co-main, right? So I didn't think about that. Yeah. That's an interesting
and even the co-main
point.
Even the co-main isn't. I mean, we've seen this recently, and we're starting the year off with this. I could name, I love these 2 guys that are fighting, both of them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to watch it. I'm not saying I'm not excited to watch it. I'm not saying they're not good fighters. I'm just saying
the UFC loves their rematches.
Didn't we just fucking do this? There's 20 fucking other fights of guys that aren't even champs that I'd want to see.
Mm-hmm.
Right now that should, you think, would be in the cycle for being able to fight. Like, why am I watching this shit again? But I mean,
that's a good point, man. And going back to what you said about the UFC pay-per-view price going up, Dana, I don't know if you saw, but Dana put the blame for that squarely on ESPN. He said it was He said it's all ESPN's call. They have nothing to do with that. That's all their call. And
then they're digging an indoor pool next door. He's like, hey, shut the fuck up. Like I said, Disney, they fucking you see his fucking butler coming in with some crazy old scotch. He's like, god damn it, like, yeah, it's totally like he's not gonna get paid off that, which I mean, he might not, and I get it. He's fighting for his life with the streamers. You know what I'm saying? Like, it can't not hurt him. So for them to hike it, if anything, I would think he would want it cheaper. If he had his way, he would probably make it cheaper.
I've been saying for a while, man. They need to move to the proper subscription model. I don't know if I really. Okay, fuck it. We don't have viewers yet, so I'll pull back the veil a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Who am I kidding?
Yeah. Who am I exactly? I'll pull back the veil and admit. You know what I mean? Right now, the UFC doesn't get any of my money. If they went to a full subscription model, honestly, even if they charge $20 a month, I would happily pay that. $20 a month, and you get to watch everything. You get all the pay-per-views, you get everything,
and a $5 premium for like the last pay-per-view, they have like a star rating, and they say, hey, fucking this shit, we need to pop you for that $5. We'll add to it.
You throw on multipliers.
Totally do it. Yeah, you know what I mean?
I'd even be fine for that. Let's say they manage to give you a card with 2 title fights instead of 1. Because almost every card has at least 1 title fight at the top of the card. So, for 2 fights, throw on make it another $5 premium or whatever like that, or make you pay an extra $5 to watch it live instead of on a tape delay or some shit like that. Give us some options.
VR option.
Yeah, but suddenly you turn around and suddenly you're getting $240 a year from me versus nothing. You know what I mean? And I think there's a lot of people that take that plunge. It's just like music power. Who's downloading torrents of music right now? Right. I mean, there's probably a lot of broke people listening to be like, "Bitch, me." You know what
me.
I mean?
I had a pause. I was doing Stevie Ray Vaughan's discography, and I didn't want it to come through on the sound, so I had to pause it on BearShare.
Yeah, on BearShare, yeah, exactly. But once actual music streaming services kind of took over, and it's just the convenience. I'll pay for that convenience.
I do, and it's stupid because I don't have to. You could just go to YouTube and search whatever you want.
It's all there.
But I do it just because I want to tap it. I don't want ads. I want to listen to a whole, and then there is a lot of exclusive stuff. Like they get exclusive, different platforms get artists out there in different times faster. So I don't know why they're not doing it. It's a good point. I feel like I don't think they really care. I don't think Disney really cares. I don't think they really care. And I don't even, and not to say, I don't think they care about the streaming as much as they make it seem.
I feel like they just want to. I feel like they just want to check the box and say, "Oh, this is where we have our sports." You know what I mean? This is where we're investing in that because I mean, obviously, the NFL is its own thing, the NBA is its own thing. All the big stick and ball sports are already kind of accounted for. This is kind of them getting in on the ground floor with a sport that for all its faults, is still growing. It still has upward trajectory.
Right. Well, Disney, ESPN, that's, they've had it for a while, but I hear what you're saying.
So, Deiveson Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno. The trilogy gets capped off this weekend as Brandon Moreno defends his title for the first time against the man who he took that hardware from, Deiveson Figueiredo. Their first fight was a draw. I had it scored for Figueiredo, but it was a close fight. I don't think you can call it a robbery either way. I mean, it was a fucking draw. So, obviously, you wouldn't call it a robbery. But in their last fight, Moreno kind of surprisingly beat Figgy everywhere. Yeah. He's beating him to the punch. Figgy looked like shit, honestly. Like, compared to their first fight, he didn't look like there was anything for Brandon Moreno to be worried about. He gets the submission in the third frame of that fight, puts it away. There was a lot said about Deiveson Figueiredo's health, the weight cuts. I don't remember if it was in the first or the second fight, but they were saying that he was in the hospital the night before the fight. So, I mean, that seemed like it was going to be a factor. And I wasn't going into this fight picking Deiveson Figueiredo. I'm still not. But they're saying that he's a lot healthier this time around, that like a week out from the fight, he's only 9 pounds above weight, so he's handling the weight cut a lot better. But they were saying that this last time also. I think it was the first time when they had the draw, when he was in the hospital. And then leading up to the second fight, or the rematch, he was claiming that no, everything's all good. I've taken care of all that. That none of that stuff's a worry. My weight cut's fine. I'm good to go for flyweight. Then he lost, and I think the excuses ended up coming anyways. So, what do you think about this fight? What do you think about Deiveson Figueiredo's chances of getting that strap back? How do you like Brandon Moreno in this fight?
I like Brandon Moreno the same as I did the second fight. I don't see any difference. The big difference is where we're gonna have to see it is in Deiveson this time around. And is it the training with Cejudo? Is that what I mean? We saw what it did to Weili Zhang against Rose, where it just didn't make sense. Why are you doing that?
Mm-hmm.
And is he going to do that again? Are they going to do that to him again? Why are you doing that? And you mix that with he's a more of a bully type fighter. I mean, going into the second Moreno fight, it was like, this guy's a bully. He's mad. He's gonna go in there and beat the shit out of him. And I think he has that mentality of that bully, that gangster type guy. And this little dude, this little sweet little guy, beat your ass twice. And even if it was a draw, in Figueiredo's eyes, in anyone's eyes, would see that as a loss. Unless in the first fight, if he didn't go out and beat this guy down, that's a loss. Even I think even a decision in Figueiredo's case, he wouldn't have liked it. So have that, and then to get soundly beat the second time, mentally, like, where are you?
That's not that big. No, not big at all, but that imposing flyweight, like menace, like mainstay type champion that we were sold from Figueiredo. Yeah.
And then it would have been better. I understand why, because he wants that championship. He wants to get it back. You can't blame him for doing it. But it would almost be better for him to fight someone who wasn't the champ to get that. Like, I'm the big guy around here. I can do this. Did you see what I did to this guy? I feel like you can tell by the way he fights. Like, he knows people are watching him. He wants people to watch him. He wants people to see, like, did you see how I beat that guy's ass? Like, that's going to happen to you. That's kind of that. I feel like that's what I get from him.
And Deiveson Figueiredo, he loves to tell his rags to riches story. That guy's really eating it up. He's like, yeah, dude, I was fucking cutting hair before this, and all the stuff he was doing. Like, he's really embracing it. He wants to be a star. You could tell, and you don't get that a lot from the Brazilian fighters. You know what I mean? A lot of them kind of want to be like heralded among their countrymen. Yes. I don't really feel that, there's that also for Figueiredo, but I feel like he wants star power. You know what I mean? I feel like the only thing holding him back from that is the language, the language barrier. But aside from that, he seems ready to cash in on that star power.
It's a good point.
But you make a good point about it would have been potentially better for him to take another fight, work his way back up to it, give us some faith, get a highlight before you get back into it. And there's some, I think the only tough part about that is there's a lot of killers, at least as far as the guys that you would match him up with. You got your Askar Askarovs, your Alexandre Pantoja. There's a guy who he already beat. It would be a rematch that he's going into that fight 1-0 against him. But that's also a big gamble to ask him to, hey, take another fight. You know what I mean? Because that flyweight division is really starting to surge right now.
Yeah, he may never get that shot again, so you might as well just take it that it's here.
For me, the biggest question mark with him is, like we mentioned, he's had the weight cut issues. I feel like his cardio failed him. His cardio and his heart in that rematch, the second fight, kind of gave up to Brandon Moreno. I mean, he tapped out, but I feel like that's going to be the biggest issue. I feel like if Brandon Moreno takes this past, if he doesn't get another submission or finish and gets him past the third round, I feel like it's free and clear for him. You know what I mean? I feel like for Deiveson Figueiredo to find success here, he's going to need to get it done early, and he's going to need to bring back that bully Deiveson Figueiredo and get really physical. Because right now, the way I'm looking, like Brandon Moreno, his heart, like if fighters had stats, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like his heart stat is like up here, like
way up there.
His spirit, like I don't feel like that guy can be broken right now. You could go in there and give him the toughest fight, and he's never going to mentally quit on you. Brandon Moreno, not right now. You're going to have to finish Brandon Moreno. You're going to have to remove him from consciousness or choke him out, something. But, he's not going to tap. That's just how I'm looking at Brandon Moreno right now. I feel like he's got the total heart of a champion. So I think with that positive outlook coming in with his new skills, he's been training with fucking Valentina Shevchenko. They're in the same weight class technically.
Canelo.
Yeah. So I feel like he's going to come with new tools, new skills, and he's going to implement that. And I think this is going to be the biggest sign that Deiveson Figueiredo probably needs to go up and make a splash into that bantamweight division.
Yeah, and it's tough that this is the fight he needs because it seems like you said the heart is there, and you get to this level where like testing anyone's heart. Like, fuck, man, you're getting locked in there, you know. You're getting locked in the cage with another crazy ass dude who's representing his whole country, like Brazil and Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
That's like some fighting culture, like both of those dudes, and you're in a weight class where like it's go for broke almost every single time,
Mm-hmm.
So man, you're right on. I think with that, what is he gonna do? And with that guy's heart, you're gonna throw anything at him, and that's the type of fighter Deiveson is. He's gonna throw everything at you so hard. So
Yeah.
he's gonna. Do you think he could get a submission in it? Would that be the best way for him to win? The best route for him to win would be a submission.
I think so. I think Deiveson. I forgot to mention that. I think Deiveson Figueiredo has a really underrated submission game and ground game.
Yeah.
And with all those question marks surrounding his cardio, and how that's going to look dealing with this featherweight weight cut or this flyweight weight cut, excuse me. I think deciding to go out there and stand with Brandon Moreno and make it a kickboxing match might be rough down the stretch for him. Granted, he can get a finish that way, but I think he'd be better off getting it to the ground, trying to find a TKO or a submission there. Because the earlier he's able to do that in the fight, or potentially put Brandon Moreno away, I think that's his better chance is getting it done early.
And I think there's a lot of like middling fighters, guys who are either on their way down from a title rise or on their way up to one, who are looking for camps, and they're gonna watch this fight and see what this camp does with Deiveson, what they're able to do. This could be one of those, like, is anyone gonna go over there after this? If seeing two title losses from two people who beforehand were very good, like Whaley and Deiveson were like were considered like top of from their country, top in their top of the food chain, and then what's the common denominator?
It's Henry Cejudo.
Yeah.
Questionable fight IQ. I don't even want to say questionable fight IQ, but questionable game planning for Zhang Weili, of course. You know what I mean? What were you doing going out there and using that wrestling offensively?
Right.
Like, I thought you were going to go and fucking flex that shit, like, to be a defensive wrestler to make sure that Rose can't take you down, but I don't know. That might be more to Deiveson Figueiredo's benefit. Like, that game plan might work a little bit better for him, which is something I hadn't actually considered. I'll be honest. After the Zhang Weili fight, I kind of looked at training with Henry Cejudo as a bit of a deterrent. You know what I mean? Like a bad thing. But if he is really going and working his wrestling there a lot, and he plans to implement that, I think that might actually be advantageous for him.
It would be just to get him in a good position for those. Like, if a limb's there, or he makes the wrong turn and you can get his back, having that extra bit of training on the ground as far as the grappling would be good.
Yeah. And working on negating the scrambles, because Brandon Moreno has a really good scramble. That's a guy who you get him down, he's fighting nonstop to get back up if he wants to get back up, if that's his plan. He's not a guy who's going to surrender position and take too much time to rest. But if Deiveson Figueiredo's wrestling has made enough leaps and bounds to where he's like, yo, if I get you down in a round, I'm going to keep you down. That's also rest for Deiveson Figueiredo. You know what I mean? If Deiveson Figueiredo comes out and wins the first two rounds on the feet, or maybe, they go 1-1, in the first two rounds, and at the third round, he's able to get Brandon Moreno down and kind of maintain control for a good majority of that round. That's kind of a round off for him. That's going to be good for his gas tank. So that's going to be beneficial. I think that if it ends up a striking match for the first half of the fight, it would be advantageous for him to use some of that Henry Cejudo wrestling and try and employ that later on in the fight.
That would be so interesting to me and there's probably way better like uses of my time, but it'd be so interesting to me to be in that training room when they're game planning, or when they're putting a game plan together in those tough sparring rounds, like what's on their mind right now. like what are they really thinking? Like, are they gonna gonna be a takedown heavy, looking for that, looking to get him down on the ground and maybe ground and pound him a little bit more than what he'd done in the past, and maybe taking that bully stand up, down where you have leverage over top of them.
Mhm.
It would be interesting. Or just like, is Cejudo that crazy? Are they like really going hard? Like you're taking kickboxing lessons from Henry Cejudo, you know what I'm saying?
That's exactly what I was thinking. Is he totally flipping the fucking script and thinking, well, they're going to
Yeah,
expect you to come out wrestling since you've been training with me,
yeah.
Or has all that wrestling training benefited Deiveson Figueiredo's cardio? I mean, there's so many questions, which I didn't even think we'd actually talk about this fight for as long as we have going into this segment. You know what I mean? I kind of thought we'd sum it up, break it down, talk about the previous fights, and make our pick and move on. But there's
I love both of these guys. Like, I would be so happy to see both of them win. The first fight, man, I was bummed seeing Deiveson lose, and then like seeing Moreno's family and everything else is just like, oh, dude, this is so cool. So
Big Frano, Francis Ngannou defends his heavyweight championship. Like I said earlier, technically disputed heavyweight championship. And I think that's not something that a lot of people emphasize enough when we go into these fights where the champion, or the sitting champion, is defending against an interim champion. Once Bruce Buffer goes in there and he's doing his fight announcements and doing his fucking spins and wearing his hideous jackets, you know what I mean? He doesn't hesitate to still call them the undisputed champion. And technically right now, he's disputed. There is another guy holding a strap in that division, and his name is Cyril Gane. He's another Frenchman, a former, I don't want to call him a teammate. I feel like a lot of people are calling him a former teammate. From what it sounds like, at least from Francis Ngannou's camp, he was never a teammate of his. It was somebody who they brought in to help him with sparring when he was preparing for a fight, So I'm not reading in too much about, as far as like, oh, he knows his style, or he used to train with him. He knows his tricks. He knows these things that he's going to anticipate. I don't think that's the case. What do you think about this heavyweight matchup moving forward? Do you like Cyril Gane here?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I think you would have to. There's all of the names, that gush over, or would you'd want to gush over you, are gushing over him right now. He does move like a welterweight guy.
Yes.
I've never really seen that in MMA.
Mm-hmm.
In Pride, when guys were smaller, you'd see smaller guys you could see guys that moved a little bit, but not like this. He looks,
and they were juiced out of their minds too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And he looks like he looks like the right time, the right here, right now for this division, for what they need going forward.
Mm-hmm.
With Stipe's gone, DC's been gone for a long time. There's a bunch of dudes knocking each other out, to see at the bottom rung of this division. So they really need that to put that nail up on there. And then who knows what happens with John. So I could totally see him winning this. I think he could.
Mm-hmm.
And to go to your point where they said that they were in any other case, I would say with any other fighter, I would say, like, say you're gonna fight Nate Diaz, or and you had him in camp because you're on the West Coast and you had fun. I don't think it'd be like it was only a couple of times. It's not going to be a big deal, or even if it was a lot, it would be a big, because he's kind of one of those things. I think with Francis, that aura about him, the imposing nature of him, the power, like to feel it. Like a lot of guys go in there like, I don't know, and then especially if you're a cage fighter for a living, you're a kickboxer, you're like, I've taken shots before. Like, it can't be what I'm seeing. But he's felt a small portion of that. He's been in a situation, a fight or flight situation,
Mm-hmm.
where with this man. So I think it really does help. It helps a lot more than if he didn't have to fight Francis. And I think it helps Cyril a lot more than it does Francis.
That's a good point.
However little bit of time that they spent together.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, Cyril Gane, I mean, he's passed the eye test for being the more cerebral fighter. And that limited experience that they might have with each other, I think it definitely benefits Cyril Gane a lot more. Is he's probably a lot more capable of downloading Francis Ngannou, you know what I mean, and getting to know his habits, understanding, like, he does this a lot. I'm going to duck under his left when I come in with a jab. So, yeah, that's a great point. I hadn't really considered that. I was just kind of thinking, it was like, yeah, you know what I mean? It was sparring. Cyril Gane's not necessarily going in there to try and like fucking best Francis Ngannou. You know what I mean? He's just kind of testing him, trying to make sure his reflexes are good like that. You know, especially if Francis is getting ready for a fight. You know what I mean? As a sparring partner, you're not going out there to try and whip that guy's ass. So if Francis Ngannou's taking a lot from those sparring sessions, that might actually be very bad for him because he's thinking like, yeah, I've felt this guy. I've felt what he does. No, you didn't really feel that guy. He's being a sparring partner. You know what I mean? He's just going in there to try and touch you and to make sure you move the right way, to keep you on your toes. But yeah, like you mentioned about the movement, man, 5 rounds is a long time to be in the cage with Francis Ngannou. With that power, that's the only uncertainty I have is that from what I've seen, Cyril Gane seems a little bit susceptible to eating uppercuts. You know, he ducks his head a lot when he's kind of like moving, when he's moving sideways, when he's circling to get out of the pocket. He likes to come in and strike, duck his head over the left hook, and kind of get out of the way and make lateral movements. And we've seen Francis Ngannou uppercut like 3 or 4 guys in the UFC and put him to fucking sleep. So there's still a very, very present element of danger for Cyril Gane. But I mean, shit, if they were wearing bigger gloves, I'd say it's Cyril Gane all day.
If it was bigger gloves, big time. I really, the thing that's going to come down to is Francis going to overthink this? Because we've seen him a few different times. I don't think Cyril will. I think Cyril's going to go in there and he has his game plan. He's going to stick to it. Mm-hmm. He's malleable, you know, how the fight's going, he'll change. I think Francis is going to go in there with something. And I think that it's just a one-track mind with him. And if he goes in there thinking one thing and it's not working the way he did, is he going to be able to switch out of that mode and kind of like freestyle his way out of that?
Is it going to be?
That's where it's going to be.
Yeah.
Where we're going to see the difference between these two.
Yeah, I see the potential for this to turn into a little bit of like a paralysis by analysis for Francis Ngannou. You know what I mean? He's going to be in there just kind of like a deer in the headlights, just wondering what to do with this guy. I can't put my hands on him. I'm getting tired. You know, the 3rd round is coming to an end. We're going into these championship rounds, and he's been there before. Or has he? Yeah, he's been there before. Yeah. But you know, to no great effect. You know, anytime Francis Ngannou has been in those championship rounds, if my memory serves me right, it's been losing. Because he's been. It was the Derek Lewis fight 3 rounds. I don't remember if it was a main event or not.
I think it was a main event.
I think it was too.
Yeah, I think it was a main event.
I think it was, and then obviously his first fight with Stipe was 5 rounds, and he lost that fight. So, any memories that Francis Ngannou has of the 4th and 5th round are probably bad.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know if they're really pushing him, or if he's felt that in his heart, he's felt that burning in his chest, and getting ready for a 5-round fight, because that is going to be a 5-round fight for sure. I should never say for sure. I could see a scenario where Cyril Gane decides, hey, I don't want to deal with that power. Like, I have the movement, I have the footwork, I have the evasiveness to dance around it for 5 rounds, but he's really good at dictating where the fight happens. Yeah. You know, he doesn't go for takedowns, but if there's a trip, he has trips. You know what I mean? I could see him deciding like, hey, 2nd round, I want to take this guy down. I want to punish him there. I want to make him realize he doesn't belong in there with me, and possibly get a submission, which I think he's capable of with Francis Ngannou. I don't think anyone's really even tested Francis Ngannou's ability to get off the ground. You know, anytime, what's his name? Curtis Blades tried, you know, it didn't. Yeah. I think he's the only guy who legitimately tried. Maybe him and Cain Velasquez before his knee blew out. Nobody's actually really, you know, so it's only Stipe. You know what I mean? Stipe in the first fight kind of laid out the blueprint for beating Francis Ngannou with wrestling. And I don't know. I don't know if Cyril Gane's going to get the fight there traditionally, or if he's just going to look for openings and exploit them and get a trip or catch a kick and take him down. But I mean, that's also been kind of hopeful. I don't think Francis Ngannou is coming to throw too many kicks in this fight. Do you think Francis Ngannou comes out and tries to blitzkrieg him right off the bat?
Yeah, that'd be an interesting to look at, like the prop bets, like how many kicks does Francis Ngannou throw in this fight, like on over under 5.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do think that he's gonna. I think maybe, and it might be smart, and it never really occurred to me, but maybe his camp would say like just go out there for this first 45 seconds to
and
a minute
and be
and
classic
just
and gone it. Yeah,
just
make
do
him.
it, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry, don't think, don't move, don't think about your breathing, don't think about anything. Just go out there and do it. Get him in a situation where he feels it early and get because I hope that they're talking to him to do something like that. That would be that might be good, just to get that out of there. Because anytime you do anything in life, just if you rush in and do it, you're not going to be thinking about it that much if you're just going in and doing it.
It would be a chance to potentially catch Cyril Gane off guard. Francis Ngannou looked a lot more disciplined in his rematch with Stipe Miocic. Granted, that fight didn't last very long, but he looked a lot more poised. He wasn't just out there. It wasn't the Rosenstruck fight. You know what I mean? Where it just looked like a slop fest. Just a train of violence moving forward. But I think that there could be a place for him to do that in the beginning and potentially try and just catch Cyril Gane completely off guard, thinking like, oh, he's not going to come in here and try and do that to me. He knows he wouldn't, but oh shit, he is. Oh shit, I have to move laterally. Oh fuck, it's just a flurry,
Yeah. And has he really been jabbed like effectively? I
Ngannou?
don't. Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, with maybe Stipe might have, but he's gonna have to he's gonna take a jab. He
That's true.
jabs out of things. He doesn't just circle and you can't just circle to the right on Stipe. You can't just circle like in a area where his reach is like he can get there. You're gonna have to be active out of the like when you're moving away from him.
Mm-hmm.
So he's gonna be getting jabbed, and like if that jab starts finding a place, is that going to be like what is this? Usually guys like would go for that lower leg on him. Usually guys would go for that thigh, that inner thigh,
Mm-hmm.
or at least that's what I've seen. Where it's kind of like that keeping the distance with them. Guys kind of go in for like a little kick and out. Whereas is he's going to, because Cyril's so good in the pocket, is he going to be jabbing out of it, and is that going to be a difference maker for him as far as what he's used to?
Or is he going to come in, touch him up, and clinch up with him before Francis Ngannou has a chance to fire back? Put him up against the cage, get him with some of those really tricky elbows that he likes to throw.
Right.
Yeah. Ultimately, Cyril Gane's a dynamo. I think he has way more paths to victory in this one. I think it's going to be my official prediction. I'm going to go on the record: Cyril Gane by unanimous decision, 5 rounds. Done.
Okay.
So,
I can totally see that. It'll be one of the two. It'll be with a knockout he's not going to knock Francis out. I don't think. I think that would be, he might with a kick. Maybe in the beginning if Cyril comes out and gets that leg kick, that lower leg kick, that calf kick in Francis's head, and he's used to checking down, and then boom, one over the top kick gets him. I could see that. I don't see him. He's definitely going to piece Francis up a few different times.
It's a good point
and
too.
How Francis comes out of that.
Yeah, it's just so. I think it might be another instance too where it's like all those quick fights for Francis Ngannou is potentially going to be to his detriment because there's so few looks that he's seen. There's so few. There's not so much variety that he's had to deal with. And the times it's either he's been shut down or gun shy with Derek Lewis, and that fight just ultimately nothing happened, or he's been out wrestled, or he's been knocking people out and obliterating them. You know what I mean? There's been no in between. There's not been a guy who it's like, oh, he's made you defend takedowns for an extended period of time, or a guy who's made you deal with his footwork and his movement and making sure that you conserve your gas tank so you don't gas out because of all the movement or anything like that. Nope, it's just been knocking dudes out, getting out wrestled, and one fight where he was just like totally gun shy and shut down.
Fluky stuff, and it looks fluky, but it's not. But man, you're right. That's such a good point. He's never had to do mid-round adjustments, like a mid-round adjustment. I think that's something where, especially when you get into the third and fourth round, where it's like, okay, we thought we were going to do this first and second to third, we tried this, and then you're in the middle of that third round. What are you going to do? And usually if it's against Curtis Blades, he's going to go to wrestle.
Mhm.
If it's against the Black Beast, he's looking to load up on that. With Cyril, like the guy could be doing tons of different things. How can you adjust? How are you going to be able to adjust when you're not used to adjusting against the guy who could potentially, if he wins this fight, he has a good chance to win this fight. If he does, the way that it's set up for him with John Jones coming in, Francis will still be there.
Mhm.
You got guys coming up that are going to make it a fight for him, that have styles that will make him look good. He could,
Francis may not be there. He's
right.
like
You don't think he could come back? Oh, you mean going to a different
yeah,
promotion?
he's kind of made it sound pretty. I mean, he's been pretty straightforward about the fact that this is it. Like he's losing now.
Yeah.
If he wins, that's certainly not going to be the case. The championship
Yeah.
clause will kick in, and his contract will be extended by one more fight. So if he wins this fight, he's not going anywhere. But he's pretty much come out and all but said like, yeah, I'm going elsewhere. Like they're not paying me enough. I'm not fighting for $500K and $600K.
Where's Francis Ngannou going to go though?
I mean,
That's
I think
kind
he
of the
wants to
crazy
box.
thing.
I'm sure.
You think so?
I'm
Ooh.
pretty confident he wants to box. And Tyson Fury already said, like, yeah, we'll make that fight
You'll
happen.
fight him. Yeah.
If he gets straight outclassed
gets
by Cyril
smoked,
Gane, though,
yeah.
I'd like to see if that fight's still on the table for him. You know what I mean?
It won't be. There's no way. If that fight's none of this happened.
It could be that fight's not on the table at all, and this is Tyson Fury just getting his name in the headlines. You know what I mean?
Right. But would Ngannou even be in a conversation? See, that's the thing where I think he rightfully deserves more money. It's criminal. Like we all know, it's a joke already.
Mhm.
It's a bad joke, but it is what it is at this point. And it is Tyson Fury tweeting about Francis Ngannou, glory kickboxing champ, or is Francis Ngannou, getting his name mentioned by anybody else if he wasn't the guy who beat Cain Velasquez, Stipe, all these guys. Those are huge names that he's not going to fight those guys anywhere else. He's not going to be where he's at. He's saying what he's saying because he's not going anywhere. He's not. I really don't think so. He'd be dumb to. Boxing's great. That'd be cool, but that wears off. That's gonna wear off real fast after two fights, and he doesn't look like he knows what the heck he's doing in there. He's not. Where's he gonna go after that?
Yeah, you're right. If he manages to score a big high profile fight, I don't think Tyson Fury will ever fight him. I honestly think Tyson Fury is actually just kind of like fucking blowing smoke up his ass to get in the headlines. I still think he wants to box, and even if he could get a fight like that, he's going to get the doors blown off. And then there will be some freak show fights, with one of the Paul brothers on one of their undercards. I don't think either of those guys want to fight him directly.
Fight Shaq or something.
Exactly, yeah. But they'll put him, on a card. I don't think it's a long game. I think it's short-term game. It's hard. How do we sit here and tell him, stay in the UFC if he's really unhappy with what he's getting paid? It's tough, but I don't think, what he thinks he should be getting paid. I don't know that there's too many promotions out there who can provide that, other than, let's say, a Bellator for a fight or two. But Bellator,
a one-off time. It would be a one-off time. So he's
there's not enough Bellator cards to maintain that for him. Yeah.
It's the forest for the trees type of deal. Like, yeah, dude, it sucks, and no one's denying that. No one's gonna tell him like, come on, dude, suck it up. Like, it's criminal. It is what it is for a heavyweight champion who has the highlights that he has. To beat the guys that he's beaten, Stipe is one of the greatest heavyweights to ever live, and and then he came back and demolished him. That's amazing. That's great. Like, anyone would want that.
Yeah.
So he deserves. I mean, he deserves 20 times what he makes. There's no getting around it.
Yeah.
But it is what it is, dude. And
exactly.
Where else are you gonna go, man? That's what sucks. That's what really sucks for these guys, because especially in his case, especially, and not to say like he couldn't go out and do anything else, or he wouldn't make a lot of money as a businessman in Africa, or or going back to Europe and doing that kind of thing. But it kind of is what it is with you, big dog, and that sucks. But
yeah. I mean, I'd love to sit here too and talk about how much of an injustice it is, and I'm certainly not here to defend the UFC's pay structure in any way. It is really fucked up. It's really criminal. I think back to my favorite fighter, Joanna Jędrzejczyk. She made like $103,000 for her fight with Zhang Weili. That's fucking criminal. You know what I mean?
Stupid.
But the sad reality is that there's always, at least in this sport, the way it is right now, there's just too many guys who are willing to pull the rug out from somebody else whenever that they want to make a stand for fight or pay. And these dudes devour each other and cannibalize each other. Like just in this instance right now, there's a lot of examples with Francis Ngannou where, I mean, shit, when they were trying to make the Francis Ngannou John Jones fight and they weren't getting anywhere with their demands and talking about how much money they wanted to make, Derek Lewis was throwing his name into the hat, talking about, I'll fucking fight for half of what they're asking for. Shit, I'll fight for like a third of what they're asking for.
And he's got a Lamborghini in the garage, and that's the reason why, because he's just down to fight.
You know,
it's quantity. You got to just be in there and fight. These guys want that that Gervonta Davis schedule where you fight twice and it's 60 million and you can sit back. It's just not going to happen in this sport.
You don't have to do much. And you don't have to do much promo. You just show up for the press conference and say your piece or whatever. It's like the game has changed. These guys, they like it kind of sucks, but you have to become a fucking troll. You have to become polarizing. You have to become someone who is either loved or hated or completely hated. You know what I mean? Whatever it's going to be. And even we see in instances where that doesn't even work out. Look at the Dylan Dennises of the world. Man, granted, that guy probably just doesn't want to fucking fight. But yeah, you have to kind of like sacrifice your integrity as far as like how you market a fight to really break through and make the money, to make a fraction of the money that they deserve to make. And it sucks, but that's the fucking rat race,
It has I think it's going to be interesting to see how the UFC evolves or how MMA evolves out of that, because it came up as kind of a sideshow and it has that stigma to it, because you and I are going to watch it no matter what, whether they talk before the fight or not. I don't really care. But
yeah, some of our favorite fighters are the stoic, quiet, fucking strong, silent type with the fedors and shit like that,
Right. And so when you're talking about that, it's just how will MMA evolve out of that wrestling mindset? And it's going to be hard because they work for Disney. Like, Disney needs a storyline. They need that. They need to market that. Disney ESPN Plus bundle. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to do that where it's like, well, you have no idea who these guys are. I know, So it's going to be weird to see how they evolve out of that, how that happens.
That's a good point. Well, I think we could pretty much put a bow on it right there. We talked about what we were going to talk about. I do want to ask you though,
yes.
for UFC 270, do you see any potentially good betting lines? Some live dogs that you'd like to invest in?
Yeah, well, I was looking at it when I was looking at it this morning. We're talking about Barcelos fighting Vieira against those are some of the guys that you can kind of like pad a parlay with. We're joking around like Trevin Giles is coming off a KO, and he's fighting Michael Morales, so that might be something you might like want to add on there. Like look for guys who are coming off KOs, and again, guys on a short there's a few different fights in this case where guys are on a short break, or not a short, or taking it on the last minute deal, just because it's not Francis or just because it's not a co-main doesn't mean you can't get paid. And that's where it is. So like guys like that, like the Trevin Giles fight, he's coming off a KO, and Michael Morales he's a good prospect. I think they put him in that space to make a highlight, to pad it. So it might be there, because that's somewhere as a bettor you want to see that what we were just talking about, where the storyline type deal and it's a Disney type thing. Well, UFC is hyper aware of that, so they're making these matchups to give these guys the highlights. And I think like in that Michael Morales case, he's coming off a good showing, and he wants to go out there. And then we're talking about Ilia earlier today. I think that'd be a good one to put on the parlay too. Just because they're putting them in there against some guys that are just stepping in and coming in after the holidays, So you could kind of catch those, but not so much live dogs in this one. I think the undercard was put together in a way to make the favorite look better, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like a little bit of that strike force matchmaking that the UFC doesn't,
Right.
and aren't so upfront about the fact that they do, but they definitely do
Yeah,
sometimes, especially with their
they
prospects
do it.
coming in that they want to invest in a little bit. Yeah. And I think there's some fun fights.
Right.
There's some interesting fights. Like you mentioned, Raoni Barcelos versus Victor Henry. I was looking,
Hmm.
Victor Henry.
Oh yeah,
Surprisingly,
that's a
Victor
good one.
Henry is one of the few, one of the Caucasoids who's made his career in Japan.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? You don't
yeah,
find a lot of those guys. Interesting that he hasn't been in the UFC yet. So I'm excited for that fight. I think that has potential to be interesting. Um, and yeah, Michel Pereira versus Andre Fialho. That's a good fight.
that's a Fialio could he can bang, man.
Mm.
That could be a good. He's got that freak power. He can put that could be a good that could be one of those ones. And that there's no that's the one right before the co-main, right? So there's no they put that fight there for a reason because that'll get your heart rate up,
Mm.
and there's a chance that both of these the main and co-main could stink. Like
Mm.
there's a chance, there's a real chance of it. Where Francis has had it happen before, and Moreno and Figueiredo know each other so well. There's a good chance that that thing might just be more of a cerebral point grab. So
Mm.
they put Fiala there for a reason. And one too that Syed Nurmagomedov is gonna look really good in that fight because Stamon's on his way out, right? If I'm
Yeah,
not mistaken.
yeah, that definitely feels like a fight to set up another Dag to have a nice like super
Yeah,
dominating
so
performance for
jump
sure.
on that. So some of those like you're talking about Barcelos, Ilia, and pad kind of pad a part. You could pad a parlay with
Mm.
those. I would say, like if I was doing it for a guy like me, who I'm not a bankroll type guy where I got to get in there for value. Those are the ones where you can kind of pad the stats, and then there's not too many good female matchups in this one. So
Nope.
it would those are the two where if you want to just add one in and you want to take you got a few different ones off the football pool, and you like two MMA fights might just sweeten that deal up. Those would be two that I would look at.
Interesting take. I value your perspective on all that. I'm not much of the better myself, so fortunate to have you here for that. You like Ilia Topuria over Charles Jourdain. What do you think about Ilia Topuria? He's coming off of that fight where he beat the brakes off of what's his name? He was going for those Imanari rolls, just
Hall,
spamming.
Ryan
Right,
Hall,
Ryan Hall. Yeah.
yeah. And
Um,
then one of the things that's why that was I hadn't really seen a ton of his fights up until then, but
Same here.
during that, I have seen a few now after, and more of like his splash reel type stuff. Like I'm not sitting in front of the whole fight round by round, but um, during that fight, no one was really surprised that he was beating the shit out of him. And for as much as I think Rogan was involved in that, as far as the um, when he was commentating, I think they had like the top notch crew commentating on that one, and they were all interested in watching this guy fight.
Yeah.
So, and I think there's a reason behind it. And when you've got guys like that who are in those production meetings, who are in those, they
Mm-hmm.
get the inside knowledge and the inside track. And when we talked about Ryan Hall being the type of guy who was a tough, one of the tough guys who they used to protect back in the days,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like, man, you got to watch out. This guy's gonna knock the shit out of you. And I think Ryan Hall didn't even notice that this guy was gonna do that to him. So
I think
I
I'd
think
heard
he
that
can.
Ryan Hall broke a hand or broke both of it or something like that. That's why he was
Oh
spamming
wow,
spamming Imanari rolls, or it might have been a fucked up foot or something like that. There's definitely a reason he
yeah,
was doing that. Yeah, it wasn't. I don't think it was what he went in there
yeah,
to want to do. But Ilia Topuria is a scary guy. He's one of the few
he
guys who's
is.
he's one of the dudes who's really waving that Georgian flag. He's one of the few
Yeah,
prospects that they have right now who's like not coming off of a loss. We got Giga Chikadze just lost this past
right.
Saturday. Liana Georgia she was never a factor, but she was a
Yeah,
dime. She was a dime piece, and they just got rid of her after she
right.
went 1 and 2.
They need. Yeah,
Marab Dualishvili broke his collarbone just recently, so he's going to be out for a little while. So until Guram Kudaladze comes back, at
yeah,
lightweight, Ilia Topuria is kind of the guy. You know what I mean? It's going to be
yeah.
someone to look out for.
And what's crazy is this. I was looking for when you go to bet and like how you came off of it, you look for like opponents and like this It's interesting you brought up Marab because it's like that five separation, or is it five different
6 degrees of separation.
separation
Mm-hmm.
of Kevin Bacon or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like everyone in LA, like everyone on this card has some type of connection to Marab. It's so funny. Like when you look at it, I was looking at like who they fought, who can you and then Marab, and then or even Marab trains with some of these guys, or it's crazy.
Yeah, Marab's a fucking goon. Yeah. You know
Yeah,
what?
he is.
That just reminds me. We gotta not today, but we gotta play that. We gotta play the degrees of separation. Give me something I play with my buddy Mike, where we'll start at like flyweight and be like, all right, start at this guy, and then you have to end at some heavyweight, and you gotta just go through all the common opponents and shit like that. He fought this guy, who fought this guy, who fought this guy, that eventually got to heavyweight, and then you start to eventually find out that like technically a bantamweight is the linear winner of a fucking heavyweight matchup. That's a fun game.
Right, that's crazy, huh?
Yeah,
and this one has Marab all over it. Whether they train together, whether they this one's a crazy one.
Yeah,
I didn't even realize
Marab's DNA is all over this card.
Yeah.
So. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us for that. I hope you enjoyed our breakdown of UFC 270. Enjoy it. It's going to be at Anaheim. We should be there. In fact, we were going to be there, but UFC turned down my request for press passes. They said that we need actual listeners and viewers.
You should go
to be able to.
So, I'll say this right now on the second episode: if we ever get to that level where it's like, who gets the press pass? I would never be mad if you got it first.
Oh. Well,
because I would hope Ioana's in one of the some shooting something at the time, and then like you guys that hallway, and then there it is.
Yeah, shooters shoot. That's all I'm doing this for, dude. I don't give a fuck about MMA, dude. I just want to meet and interview Ioana.
That would be so crazy if that's why you're doing this. Is just at some point you don't even give a fuck about Merab Dvalishvili. You don't even care. We're all talking about him and the degrees that you're playing.
I don't actually know I don't know anything about Merab Dvalishvili. I just saw his name on a paper. All right, guys. Well, we will be back just right after UFC 270 wraps up. You probably won't see that on YouTube until the following, probably Sunday night or Monday morning. When that goes up, because we won't be doing it live, but we will be together recording right after the pay-per-view wraps up, giving all our thoughts, all of our reactions to everything that unfolds. We hope it's an exciting one, and unless Brandon has anything else to add, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up right there, guys. I just barely hit it right now. I forgot to mention, this is something I wanted to talk about during the show. We just got breaking news a little earlier today. It started off as a rumor that Amanda Nunes would be leaving American Top Team, still staying in Florida, not going back to Brazil, but she's going to be starting her own team moving forward, and she is cutting ties with American Top Team.
Never good.
Never good, exactly. It's kind of questionable because I don't remember when she went to American Top Team. I know she's been there for a majority of her championship run. So that kind of makes me wonder, like a lot of other people in the MMA blogosphere, talking head circles, everybody, even before it was officially before it was officially confirmed, everybody was like, okay, yeah, cool. But what does that mean with Kayla Harrison? That was like the big speculation. Everyone said, well, if she's leaving ATT, that must mean that Kayla Harrison must have got signed, or there's potentially going to be a fight on the table. What did you think? What was the first thing that popped into your head when you heard that Amanda Nunes would be leaving ATT?
I didn't know this was a thing until you brought it up to me. Maybe it's just because I wouldn't ever want to leave that situation. This is from what the rumors is about it, the way the fighters are taken care of. It's like so unique to ATT, like the situation that they have there. I think a big thing behind her was Brown putting those game plans in for and what's crazy is the first thing I thought of was, I think you mentioned it, was because he was training two guys. He was training two guys in that he was training two fighters in that thing, and you said, like, what did he say to her in the hallway or in passing, or what would he be saying to her if he wasn't out here training, or it wasn't out here with Dustin? Like, what would he be saying to her right now? And so that was interesting. Like, maybe she felt that I could have got the same amount It'll be interesting too to see if like she just yeah, it's a different team, but they're still gonna train me. But I'm gonna have more thing. I'm still gonna have my 6 o'clock with him.
Hmm.
You know, is that still gonna how's that gonna work out? Or is it just like, dude, I had a title fucking shot, the biggest fucking upset in MMA history, and you were fucking over here training someone else for and granted it was a champion, it was a big fight, it was a championship, but what the fuck, I can't. I'm the greatest woman fighter of all time. I can't get an extra 15 fucking 20 minutes with you. You
Hmm.
know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
it's
I
a good
would
point.
be
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
no,
you.
oh, not at all. No, no, go ahead.
But yeah, that's a good point about the coaching situation. They're potentially being a little spread thin, because
Yeah,
I've seen some other instances of that where it was guys who were specifically being trained, or coached by Michael Brown, and then come fight night, he's actually not in their corner. You know what I
yeah,
mean? They're sending his a satellite coach to kind of be in his
yeah.
place, and um, I've always kind of thought about it like the way ATT works as a little bit more beneficial for younger fighters, and then like I'm not really sure where the juice is for like really really established fighters aside from having like a wealth of sparring partners and training partners, you know
Right,
what I mean?
right.
Because I know at ATT there they have like a dorm for foreign
Yeah,
fighters who are coming over who don't have a place to live, and
right.
literally just like, dude, just fucking eat, sleep, and train
Stay
here,
here.
you know what I mean?
Right.
um and I think that in a way, potentially having the option to train under a coach like Michael Brown, but maybe come fight time, you know what I mean? You can't necessarily afford for him to actually drop what he's doing and travel and be in your corner. That could be perceived as flexibility. You know what I
And how
mean?
present is he? How present is he in those meetings?
Hmm.
Is he thinking like, "Fuck, I got this guy coming in at 11. This guy might join me. I got a meeting with this guy at, so
And I've seen a few instances where I think there was a card um, where Mike Brown was coaching like two or three guys at Bellator when he
right,
had like a big name marquee fighter fighting on a UFC card, but he was with the Bellator guys because at the end of the day, I mean that's three checks versus one.
one, right.
So I'd like to know how much that plays a factor. Um,
It
oh,
has to. It has to. It would for me if
mhm.
my boss is like, or not. I mean, is he a boss? Though that's crazy.
Mike
Like
Brown.
that's the
Well,
crazy dynamic. Like
Dan Lambert's the boss, and see
the
that.
boss, yeah,
Yeah, and this is where
yeah,
I think a lot of that deserved like Kayla Harrison speculation comes into play too, because if that's something that's not confirmed yet but is on the way, where we're getting used that Kayla Harrison to sign with the UFC, Amanda Nunes has to be looking at it and knowing that Kayla Harrison is Dan Lambert's like darling right now.
right,
Like, if Dan Lambert if they're both hanging from a fucking cliff, Dan Lambert sees too many dollar signs in Kayla Harrison. I think he knows he can
right.
make her the next Ronda Rousey. Anybody
True.
who says that she can't be the next Ronda Rousey is a casual who probably only watched during the Ronda Rousey era. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because I think she has, she could cut a promo better than Ronda Rousey. She's not delusional about the level of her boxing like Ronda Rousey was.
yeah.
She's a better
Good point.
judoka. She's more physically imposing. She's probably, I mean, I'll go on a limb and say she can handle a loss better than Ronda Rousey, although we haven't seen her lose in mixed martial arts yet. So I think that might, even whether or not they are going to fight each other, it just, it could be like one of those deals where she's coming in and I'm here, and I just don't, I want the attention on me. I don't want to have to share that with somebody else, with
Yeah,
a hot young prospect. I'd
yeah.
like to see how many fighters make the jump with her. Some other fighters that are affiliated with,
None.
kind of closer to them, other than like your Nina Ansaroffs and maybe your Amanda Hebosses and um.
None. Yeah, those. I mean, that's a given.
Mhm.
That there won't be any like splash names. I mean, why would you?
Mhm.
But man, that just sucks.
Mhm.
That because what she did is so amazing, and it's just so cool. And to me, like that's one of the coolest things that I've seen in MMA. And that's what's the huge. She is a shining example of like outside of like the Olympic gymnastics. No one watches women's sports. I would watch I have watched where she's the only name on the card,
Mhm.
and and whether it's 2022 and we're all inclusive, and there's just so many different things, but women's sports is that thing where it's just you can't hide it, the difference between a woman and a man in certain sports. You just can't hide it.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
with her, it was, and like there was so many that came before her, so not to disrespect anyone, but the way that she bridged that gap to where she took it to that level of like just an app, like what she did to Ronda Rousey, like you saw it, like we talked about the difference in like what the opponent does. Ronda's face in that fight, it was just like, I could fight this girl 150 times. I'm losing 100 times.
Mm-hmm.
So, and she realized that in the cage. She probably like was already like trying to not forget Vince McMahon's number in that cage because it was it was just she changed the game for everybody
Yeah.
and for women's sports because Ronda Rousey was great. She was a great fighter. No one can Hall of Famer, well deserved. What she did was amazing,
Mm-hmm.
but it was well, look where she's at, WWE star.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's what she was, and it made women's MMA more of a freak show type thing, sideshow type thing,
Yeah.
where Amanda Nunes took it to like, no, dude, I can beat dudes that are my size. Like it
Yeah.
wouldn't be too hard. The guys that are pros that are my size,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be that it wouldn't be that crazy. Where no
She
one's
wouldn't be
no one
completely
from
hopeless. Yeah.
yeah, no one from the WNBA is gonna play on the NBA, and that's just a given.
Mm-hmm.
But there isn't anybody. But
Mm-hmm.
she could fight someone her size, especially if in a stand up fight. So
Yeah, there's very, very few other female fighters in any of the divisions who could start getting comparisons to somebody like Anderson Silva, just as far as like what they're even accomplishing, the title runs that they're putting together. I'm not saying like she has the same skill set or can do the same things that Anderson Silva does inside the cage against female fighters, but just that sheer dominance, getting that mystique, that aura of invincibility that she claimed. You know what I mean? We were talking about her like that before this loss. And now that she's going and switching up camps and leaving ATT and leaving her previous coaches, when the way she lost, I mean, is the way I didn't remember too many Amanda Nunes losses. She'd been winning. She'd been dominant for that long, where it's like the memories of her losses were kind of in the past. And I had just assumed that like whatever issues that she had that made her lose that way, where she kind of like where the wheels just kind of fell off and she seemingly gave up, that would be behind her. You know what I mean? She's ascended to a level in the sport where it's like if she loses, it's going to be because somebody just came along and is finally better and is going to but I mean, the thing is, I don't think that Juliana Pena is better. You know what I mean? That sounds so fucked up to say. She's not, but she knows, or she remembered the way Amanda Nunes lost, or how she would lose before, and how she would kind of lose mentally and give up. And she kind of reminded us that that Amanda Nunes is still in there, despite of all her accomplishments and all of her achievements. She's still in there somewhere, and I got her to come back out, and I got her to lose that way. And it's just a shame that she's going to switch up camps, because it's like, I don't think anything that Mike Brown was showing you is the reason that you lost, or the game plan, because you were winning in that first round. You know what I mean? You got some demons inside. I shouldn't call them demons. You know what I mean? But what you got going on up here is probably more the issue. You know what I mean?
And it's a rash decision, bro. Mm-hmm. It's rash. Like, and so that makes me think too, like, was it like, what was that the lead up? Was she so unhappy there?
Mm-hmm.
Was it like having the kid and, balancing all that stuff and how all that worked? It'd be super interesting to talk to her and just talk that out with her.
Mm-hmm.
That would be really cool, because like that's the life gets in the way type thing,
I'll see if I can get her on the phone soon.
Yeah, please. Well, I mean, Joanna on one. I wanted to do a Joanna and Jan Blachowicz, like the fatal four-way, and then have you in the middle as like the middle square. Yeah. But it would be so cool to talk to her and just be like, what was it? Was it like, were they not respecting, your decision to be a mom and take time away from camp to do it? Were they not training you like they were Dustin? Were they not training you like they were these other guys? Mm-hmm. Or was it all cool, and is it just kind of like, is this just out of nowhere? Yeah. You know what I mean?
I mean, I hope it wasn't any of that stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah. I would hope that they were treating her right, and I kind of, I do hope that it's the Kayla Harrison speculation. Yeah, I hope that's it, because it
makes the most sense.
It makes sense. It's the most exciting, potential.
You see where I take it though? I take it to like the dirty, like, ooh, they were her mother's.
Yeah,
right.
She heard murmurs, Dan Lambert talking about her behind her back and shit like that.
They took down the flag that she put. Like, yeah, start getting all that dirty.
Yeah,
I don't know what
Rosenstruck was leaving dirty notes on her locker and shit like that.
Yeah.
We're starting to write American Top Team fan fiction.
He
like
was
fucking...
fanfic. Yeah. She caught him smelling the bench.
Right.
It's like,
yeah.
oh, why you smelling the bench, man? You always come in here, you smell the bench, man.
Yeah, man. So I mean, I hope that's what it is. I hope it's the if for nothing else, because that would mean that Kayla Harrison signed. That's one of the bigger WMMA signings that I want to happen. I don't really need to see them fight. Honestly, like even though Amanda Nunes still holds that featherweight title, now that we've gotten a little farther away from it, and now seeing the kind of decisions that she's making, I feel like some of the luster has gone away a little bit from that fight, and I hope it still happens because there's not a lot there for Kayla Harrison if it doesn't. You know what I mean? Jermaine Durandamy is going to be retiring soon. Holly Holm's still around, but she's dealing with an injury. You know what I mean? It would be a shame if Kayla Harrison comes over to the UFC, kills herself to make featherweight, because she's, she fights at lightweight. It's a struggle for her to get to 145, and it's she has
for women.
It
is harder.
And it would be a shame for her to make all those sacrifices. Put another $1 million season of the PFL behind her and only have Norma Dumont to fight. You know what I mean? So.
Man, there's so much with that. The gap, the disparity is just so hard to. You would just Now that you're saying it out loud, and like I said, I didn't even know this was even like anything. I thought she was there right now. I was hoping she was there this morning. Getting down.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, it was Chris Dawkins, the UFC heavyweight, who just got shellacked by Derek Lewis, who got the big like Kayla Harrison rumor mill going. He just posted on Twitter. He tweeted like, Kayla Harrison signed with the UFC. I have no sources. That's all he put. And all of the MMA media, including us two, are running with it right now. So
it's like stopped it and went back.
Yeah. So
man, that's crazy.
So anyways, we had
that storyline.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, that's just the storyline that we're talking about it. Like, who knows how much of this is fabricated,
Yeah,
so
but
we're like
by this time Saturday, post fight, we might have more information about it. I'm hoping by then we'll know if it's the Kayla Harrison scenario. If not, then the plot thickens and we just kind of see Amanda Nunes kind of deal with this post loss, post bantamweight reign and how she handles it. So
if
I think
you're watching Amanda, we love you. We're an Amanda Nunes podcast.
Yeah, we do. We absolutely do love you. Yeah.
Yeah, you're the best.
Yep. Shout out to Amanda Nunes. Answer off. Nina Nunes, take care of her.
Yes.
For us. You know what I mean?
Nina, please.
So
we don't spell it the bench. We wouldn't have spelled it the bench if we were there.
Never.
Respect. It would be all respect. No smelling the bench. So.
None of that. So we had to hit record for that one again because we forgot to bring that up. So I'm gonna shoehorn that in there. So never mind the hard edit. So wherever that happens to end up in this episode. Thank you guys again for sticking with us, and that has been episode 2 of The Fight Plug. Have a good night or good day, whatever time it is for you watching this.